Okay, so really the only difference with the wires, I didn't change anything other than this was originally the purple wire, and that led to your speaker terminal at the back of the cabinet. So this is your incoming positive signal. When I double decker this, I'm going to be drilling holes on all of these wires. Are actually going to end up coming up through the back of this plate. Just kind of keeps everything kind of neat and organized. And because I'm really only putting 2 coils on the back of this, I have lots of room to bring the wires up, and I'm going to label them. These are the screws I'm going to use. I wanted to use something fairly long because these tabs on here aren't long enough and they don't stick up past all my components. The tallest thing here being this coil for the woofer, and then the fuse holder for the fuse protection. So I kind of want to have it set somewhere about here-ish, I guess. So there's going to be a gap. So I want the screw to be long enough to get into this tab and then still kind of hold this. So I'm going to try to make this work as neatly as possible, and yeah, go from there. I'm going to go get my drill. I'm just going to run that 1/8 drill bit into the holes on these tabs here on the crossover, just to make sure if it's too small of a hole, that screw go in there. I don't want to split these because then I'm kind of hooped. So I'm going to do that. So when I was doing that, I want to make sure you don't go too far, because you will poke through and then you'll end up with the hole in the front. So yeah, I just wanted everything to be even. So because as I'm threading these screws in, it also is threading through here. And I do kind of want to keep this grip, because I don't want to I didn't drill the holes big enough to just slide the screws into. Otherwise, this is just going to move around. Once the screws are in place, I do want the threads of that screw to hold into this piece of puckboard as well. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to give this a try. This is a good point right now. Before I start doing anything else, I'm just going to make sure that this part of the crossover is going to fit into the hole of the cabinet. If I have to do any trimming or any kind of modifying to get it to fit, I want to do this now before I get too far and start getting other parts in there, because I might have to take this off again. So it worked out pretty good, even with all the wires kind of sticking out the sides. I don't have everything kind of pushed to the back. It still fit in there really nice, so I'm happy with that, so I'm going to continue on. Okay, now I know that it's going to fit. I want to run, I got a couple wires here I got to run to the top. So this being from the old inductor, it's the same gauge, so I kept that wire long. I'm going to drill a hole here so I can bring this wire up through so I can get that coil on. And then that coil goes to this capacitor here. So I'm also going to drill another hole. I can bring this lead from this cap up here and then make my connection there. So a little bit of planning that needs to be done when you're placing air coil inductors. You don't want them interfering with each other. And there's a lot of things that come into play. The size of them, the smaller they are and less power they'll be running through them, the less maybe they're going to interfere with each other, but you do not want them placed like this. You also don't want them placed like this. I guess the rule of thumb when placing air core inductors is you don't ever want to be able, so let's say this one's placed like this. you don't ever want to be able to see the other inductor by looking through the center of the other one beside it. So even if you go like this, perfectly fine. Even this, the best is to keep them spaced apart as far as possible. You also have to consider, now I don't know how much I don't know how much this really matters. It's not going to matter in this situation because I've got lots of space. I don't think it would be the greatest idea to place this guy right on top of this. Probably not a good idea. So my large inductors here, I'm going to place this guy down like this, but off to the side and well enough away. Especially because this guy is going to connect here and then back here, so that'll make it easier for me to make that connection. And then this one, I don't know, like this maybe. I could also place it like this, I suppose. For most of the holes, I still got my 1/8 drill bit here. That's what I'm going to use. That's big enough to get my wires through. Should have no interference with any of the coils, and lots of room for me to bring all my wires through. I might have to move this guy over a little bit. I think I'm going to do this. And like that. So here's where I want to drill my 2 holes. And then I'm going to run a zip tie through there. Let's do that. And be careful not to puncture the caps underneath. Actually, you know what? This little piece of metal here. All I'm going to do is just slide this in there. Okay, so there we go. That does it. This is going to be... I'm pretty excited to test this out. So I just kind of... pretty messily. I just labeled everything. So this is tweeter. This one goes to the speaker terminal, positive. Quite obviously, all these are your negatives. Doesn't matter which one goes where. Although one is longer, and I believe that's the one. I don't know, it's probably the one I'll run to the woofer. Okay, so this is kind of what I'm dealing with. I got my two D9s set up here on top of actually another set of speakers, some Altecs that I have laying around. And basically what I'm going to be doing with my SPL meter here is I've got it pretty much centered with the center of the woofer here. And so the height is going to stay the same from one to the other. So because I want to keep the distance and everything the same, I've only got one SPL meter, and it's really not the highest quality one either, but it's the one I got, so it's what we're going to use. So I'm going to be kind of testing each speaker individually and each driver of that speaker individually as well. So what I've got set up here, I've got my Adcom GTP 500 preamp. I will be running this for this test. Everything is balanced out. Bass, treble, everything is set in the middle. I do have my low filter on. I'm probably going to take that off. So I'm going to run those filters off. I am in mono because I'm just going to keep it there for the time being. I will be running some music through it, so I kind of want to keep that set. I've got my GFA 555 in bridged mode, so we got lots of power going to these. And then my phone will be running off of just my Bluetooth transmitter. All I'm going to do is take a reading at 29 hertz and then 500 hertz on the woofer, because they are rated down to 29 hertz, and then the crossover frequency from woofer to mid-range is 500 hertz. I'm then going to move to the mid-range and do a 500 hertz test to 3500 hertz test, just because that is the two crossover frequencies on the speaker from woofer to mid and then mid to tweeter. And then of course once I move to the tweeter, I'm going to do the same thing, 3500 hertz, but then to 20,000 hertz, just because that's the highest rated frequency of the speaker, and see if there's any major differences. Okay, so that's going to do it. That's the whole crossover rebuild on these speakers. I'm pretty pumped with the results. I was going to A and B some music on there and show you guys the difference. I was able to hear the difference, but unfortunately when I played it back on video, it really was hard to tell. And then by the time I upload to YouTube and it compresses everything, you wouldn't be able to hear the difference. So there really was no point in doing that. So I decided to do that SPL meter kind of just to give you guys some numbers and see some differences. And I just want to go over some of those with you. So at the lowest frequencies that these speakers are rated, it was louder on the factory crossover than it was on the rebuilt one. It was only 2 dB. It still sounded better on the rebuilt one. There was a lot of distortion coming from that woofer on the factory crossover speaker. So even though it played a little bit louder, it still wasn't better. The rebuilt one was still much better. The biggest difference is in the mid-range. Now, even when it comes to the sound level, the SPL level on the mid-range at the 500 hertz crossover point. So these speakers have a crossover frequency of 500 hertz from woofer to mid-range. The mid-range played a lot lower than the factory crossover did. I shouldn't say a lot lower, but it was 8 dB louder at 500 hertz than it was with the factory crossover. So that's telling me maybe those capacitors for that mid-range may have been filtering a little bit too much, and then it really cleaned up with the new caps that I put in. Once you got to the 3500 hertz on the mid-range, they played about even. And the tweeters, here's the next biggest thing, and it looks troublesome on paper. The new crossovers actually played 5 dB quieter than the rebuilt crossovers did at 20,000 hertz. This is not an audible level for most people, I know me, especially not, I start losing right around 16,000 hertz. Anything above there, it really starts kind of dropping off in my hearing. So not an audible difference on paper. Yes, there is, but still 100% better sounding with the rebuilt crossovers than the factory crossovers. So I'm really thrilled, actually so thrilled with the speakers that these are the first speakers that are going to take place of my VS120s in my shop, which I had sitting up there for quite some time. So I now have these D9s up here because I enjoyed the sound of them so much. And yes, they are a rock speaker and they sound awesome with some good rock music. Now with these rebuilt crossovers, man, everything sounds really, really good. I found myself listening to different music than I usually do. Like I said, a lot of the heavy vocal stuff. With the upgraded crossovers, it was so much more pleasant to listen to. It really calmed down that high end. I can crank these things at some pretty crazy volume levels, and it's not exhausting to listen to. It just sounds really, really good. Yeah, like I said, I was that thrilled with them. They took over the place of, well, my favorite speakers from Cerwin Vega for all around listening. So I'm going to have these up in the shop for a while, and I'll get to play around with them for a bit. Till next time, Cerwin Vega, big or small, save them all.